I think it's very applicable for our time. It's a prophecy written 3,000 years ago by King David's worship leader Asaph, who was also a prophet, we're told in 2 Chronicles 29:30. And he talks about a confederacy that is going to come together of Arab populations and people groups, which today happen to share common borders with Israel. Lebanon, Hezbollah are there, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Palestinians, Hamas, Egypt. Enemies of Israel since Israel became a nation and the wars that they've fought. And of course, the terrorist groups have spawned from that. But Asaph says that they're going to come together in a confederacy. They're going to form a devious plan, and they're going to try to cut the nation off that the name of Israel can be remembered no more. It's a confederacy that wants to wipe Israel off of the map. And we're told later on in Psalm 83, verse 12, that they want to take for themselves the pastures of God for a possession. So it's a prophecy that has not found fulfillment yet through the Old Testament, and they want to destroy the nation of Israel, which means there has to be an Israel. There was no Israel between 70 AD and 1948, but there is an Israel now. And what is the mantra of a lot of the Arab states over there right now? They don't, Hamas, terrorist population out of the Gaza, we don't recognize Israel's right to exist. Syria doesn't recognize Israel's right to exist. Really, if it's a prophecy for our time, and I sincerely think it is, they don't want peace with the Jews. They want one more Arab state, and they want to hail the flag of Palestine over that state.
And they want a universal caliphate with its capital in Jerusalem.
They do. And as a matter of fact, the Muslim Brotherhood, when they were in power, before Mohammed Morsi got ousted this past June, they had wanted to march toward Jerusalem at some point. That was going to be his ultimate goal. And not just them, but that's also what the Palestinians, they want Jerusalem to be the eternal capital of a Palestinian state. And that's widespread in Islam. And so we've been really getting a lot of pressure in that direction. When the Palestinian Authority went to the United Nations at the end of 2012, got non-member state status, 3 days later, early December, Mahmoud Abbas, president of the Palestinian Authority, said one day Jerusalem will be the capital, the eternal capital of the Palestinian state. That's what they want.
When you look at the end-time prophecy of Psalm 83, how many nations are involved in this confederacy?
Well, when Asaph wrote 3,000 years ago, he had Ammonites and Moabites and Edomites, and I often like to say gigabytes and megabytes, but
yeah.
you know, we've got a little time, so
right.
I'll keep it focused. But he didn't have Palestinians, he didn't have Jordanians, Hezbollah, things like that. So we have to extrapolate. Who is he trying to identify for us when the prophecy is going to find fulfillment? Who will they embody as far as territorially, as far as ethnically, and things like that? So he mentions 10 populations, and among them, first, he talks about the tents of Edom. Now, whenever you have a member in a confederacy listed first, they tend to be very important in that confederacy. Their plight, or they're the leader, or something like that. So tents of speak of the Edomites in a habitation condition. Tents of biblically represent refugee conditions or military encampments. So I go through my book and I do the research as to, well, who are the Edomites today? And the Edomites have descended from Jacob's twin brother Esau, and they have ethnical representation in the Palestinians today. The Palestinians became refugees when they first came against Israel in 1948. That's when the tents of Edom became a reality.
That's true.
And now we got a problem.
That's true.
We still got a refugee crisis. And what are the Arab states trying to banner? A Palestinian state. You know, let them have Palestine. We need one more Arab state. We don't want them to be refugees anymore. We want to destroy Israel so that we can take over the promised land, the pastures of God, so we can have a Palestinian state.
It's amazing how meticulously accurate the prophetic word of God is, isn't it? And you can certainly see that in your detailed analysis of Psalm 83. I've been told there's, 9 end-time battles in the Bible?
Yeah, you know, actually Dr. David Reagan has come out with I think it's something called the 9 End Times Wars of the Bible, and he does a really good job on that. 3 real big ones, though, that I'm focused on would be the Psalm 83, which would be the climactic concluding Arab-Israeli war, which I believe very well could be imminent in light of all the geopolitical things that are going on right now, especially since the Arab Spring. I think that then Israel wins that war. I point out that the Israeli Defense Forces rally to the cause. They're in fulfillment of Bible prophecy. They win that war. Then Israel can burgeon out a little bit, a little more territory, become a little safer. They'll be prosperous. They're already very prosperous. And then you've got this big, major prophetic war described in Ezekiel 38 and 39, where Russia puts together a coalition, 9 total countries, entirely different than Psalm 83.
Right,
None of the
that's
coalition of Ezekiel 38 and 39 share common borders with Israel, whereas all
and
of
Iran is mentioned in Ezekiel 38 and 39.
Ezekiel 38 and 39, and of course Iran's in the news now with their nuclear program. So I believe the Israel that's involved in Ezekiel 38 and 39 were given descriptions. They're dwelling securely in the midst of the land in the latter days, without walls, bars, nor gates, are very prosperous. Then Russia musters up its coalition to come against that specific Israel. And Todd, personally at this point, I don't believe that Israel exists entirely. They're not dwelling securely. They've got a 403-mile wall that separates Palestinian
security
terrorism.
fence, yeah.
Yeah, and they've got checkpoints and things like that over there. So now when they can eliminate the concerns with the Arab problem around them, and certainly nobody wants war, but apparently that's what it's going to come to, then they can dwell securely, and they can take down that wall, if we want to look at that literally. I mean, the Berlin Wall came down real quick, so can that wall. Right. So I think that we could be looking at very detailed prophecies dealing with that war, Psalm 83, Ezekiel 38, and then of course the granddaddy war of all is the final climactic war, when it's the Armageddon campaign, the Antichrist, that's another thing in the tribulation period.
Where do you think the United States is in all this? You think maybe the rapture happening right before the tribulation plays a factor into their pacifist protesting role?
Well, that would certainly, it would neutralize not only American army, but it would also neutralize a lot of the European armies and the Western armies in general. Matter of fact, in the scenario you're suggesting there, if you have Israel winning some wars in Psalm 83, and the Russian war, were actually not the IDF, but the Lord stops that war, we're told, with fire and hailstone and brimstone in Ezekiel 38. And now you've got this different Israel, this burgeoning Israel, and all of a sudden you take out the rapture with the Christians. There'll be a lot of Christians will go out of Europe. Now all of a sudden
it's
Russia,
a big void.
Yeah, the coalition in Gog and Magog is predominantly all Muslim. No Muslims, unless they believe in Jesus, and if they believe in Jesus, they become a Christian, not a Muslim any further. They are not; those Muslims are not going to be raptured. Their armies will still be 100% intact. Western armies will be neutralized, greatly depleted. Not just America, but also Lutherans in Germany and that sort of thing. So you would have a situation where Russia could say, look, Iran, Turkey, Libya, and all the other members involved in that coalition say, look, the only thing standing between us and superpower status now is that burgeoning Israel over there. Let's go get their wealth. They think they're dwelling securely at this point in time. Let's go tackle them. So that would be in Ezekiel 38 and 39. So that's if the rapture occurred before Ezekiel 38 and 39. So,
It makes sense. It all seems to fit together.
Well, we don't know the timing, of course, of the rapture.
Right. It's a signless event. It's imminent.
Right.
It can happen at any moment.
I subscribe to a pre-trib rapture. I don't think the church will be appointed to the wrath of God that is displayed in the rapture, in the tribulation. But I also believe Psalm 83 is a pre-trib scenario, and I point out why it can't happen in the tribulation. When you understand the psalm, it has to happen before the tribulation. I also believe there's sound reasons to think Ezekiel 38 and 39 happens at least 3.5 years before the tribulation. They're burning weapons for 7 years.
7 years, yeah.
So in the first half of the tribulation, 3.5 years, they could be burning weapons. And the first 3.5 years before the tribulation, they could be burning weapons. So some of us subscribe to the thought that that's also a pre-trib event. And the rapture, of course, pre-trib.
Right.
So 3 big pre-trib events that seem to be on the nearby horizon.
Yeah, for sure.
And all game changers for the world.